Welcome to the third webinar in the 2025 EDA Disaster Supplemental Series. This presentation is on the implementation grant path, including goals, expectations, and award criteria. This webinar will provide prospective applicants the opportunity to determine if this is the right grant path for you and provide assistance for assembling a competitive application. Please also review the entire notice of funding and the FAQs, which are available on our website. For a bit of background on EDA and our mission, the Economic Development Administration leads the federal government economic development agenda by promoting innovation and competitiveness, preparing American regions for growth and success in the worldwide economy. EDA invests in communities by supporting strategy development and implementation projects that include planning, technical assistance, critical infrastructure development, workforce training and disaster recovery, to name a few project types. On June 4, EDA announced the FY25 Disaster Supplemental Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, which makes approximately $1.45 billion in funding available to American communities that experienced or had major disaster declarations for hurricanes, wildfires, severe storms, flooding, tornadoes, and other natural disasters that occurred in calendar years 2023 and 2024. This represents EDA's single largest supplemental appropriation for natural disasters to date. This is the third in a series of webinars from EDA on the FY 2025 Disaster Supplemental NOFO. This webinar focuses on the implementation path. Additional webinars focus on an overview of the NOFO, other funding paths available, and on applying on the online grants management portal, EDGE, can be found on eda.gov on the FY 2025 Disaster Supplemental page. Under this funding opportunity, EDA is making funding available in three focus areas. These areas are designed to allow the agency to nimbly respond to the myriad of needs communities have to build the competitive environment for economic recovery post-disaster and include readiness projects, implementation projects, and industry transformation grants. In general, EDA expects to fund implementation projects in the following ranges: between $100,000 to $5 million for non-construction projects, and between $2 million to $20 million for construction projects. However, this is not a firm cap, and EDA may deviate from these ranges and fund projects greater than $20 million in cases of exceptional need or impact. The amount EDA will fund for an individual implementation project will depend on the relative impacts a disaster had on the community, as well as the private investment projected to be generated by the project or the jobs created or retained. These are not hard caps, but instead estimates of EDA's expectations. The FY 2025 Disaster Supplemental Notice of Funding Opportunity is not just about rebuilding. It's about transforming local economies after disaster, with an emphasis on improving communities' economic outcomes and resilience to future disasters. EDA aims to facilitate economic recovery that drives opportunities for future private investment, business formation and expansion, and job creation. The objective of implementation path grants is to support construction or non-construction projects that address economic challenges following a disaster and improve economic trajectories beyond pre-disaster economic conditions. There are three parts to eligibility: eligible applicant, eligible location, and allowable types of activities. I'll discuss eligible location and organization here and in a few moments. We will cover examples of allowable activities that we can fund under this program. An eligible project must be located in, primarily serve, or demonstrably benefit one or more communities in areas that received a major disaster designation as a result of natural disasters, such as hurricanes, wildfires, severe storms, flooding, and tornadoes in calendar years 2023 and 2024. To determine location eligibility, please check the Disaster Declaration FEMA website to see if the county is part of a major disaster declaration. Please discuss with your economic development representative as well. Regarding organization type, EDA can offer grant assistance to 1. District organizations. These are EDA federally recognized economic development districts. 2. Indian tribes or a consortium of Indian tribes. This includes tribal enterprises. 3. States, counties, cities, or other political subdivisions of a state, including a special purpose unit of a state or local government engaged in economic or infrastructure development activities, or a consortium of political subdivisions. 4. Institutions of higher education or a consortium of institutions of higher education. 5. Public or private nonprofit organizations or associations acting in cooperation with officials of a political subdivision of a state. This includes nonprofit institutions of higher education. 6. Economic development organizations. 7. Public-private partnerships for public infrastructure. Public-private partnerships for public infrastructure must submit documentation defining the partnership, which contains details of the agreement, including roles and responsibilities, and is signed by all parties. EDA is not authorized to provide grants to individuals or for-profit entities under this NOFO. Applications from individuals or for-profit entities will not be considered for funding. Implementation path projects can be used for a wide variety of construction and non-construction projects. Here are some examples of implementation projects, which begin on page 9 of the NOFO. Critical infrastructure. This entails building new public infrastructure, relocating infrastructure to a less vulnerable location, and repairing or hardening infrastructure to mitigate or prevent the impacts of future disaster events. This is important for helping existing businesses reopen, recover, reduce future damage, as well as meet the needs of new businesses. Innovation and entrepreneurship. These projects assist the expansion of new business and industry development by sparking innovation and entrepreneurship through, for example, the establishment of business incubators and proof of concept centers. A non-construction technical assistance project focused on growing entrepreneurship and innovation may also support this goal of new business development. Business lending and workforce development. This category helps move capital to impacted businesses through capitalizing or recapitalizing a revolving loan fund managed by an eligible applicant. RLFs assist impacted businesses get back on their feet, expand, and support new business development. Please note, EDA does not fund private for-profit businesses directly, but can fund an eligible applicant to capitalize or recapitalize such a fund. Please see EDA's revolving loan fund website for more information. Recovery and planning, including economic recovery strategic planning and activities intended to spur or accelerate large-scale industry investment. To drill down a little further on EDA's support of public projects and construction projects, implementation grants help disaster-impacted places repair, upgrade, and replace critical infrastructure assets seriously damaged or destroyed by a major disaster, or that are otherwise critical to the restoration of economic activity and enhance economic growth. This includes both new infrastructure and repairs to existing infrastructure to restore and expand to business development and economic opportunities. Projects to increase the resilience of critical infrastructure to future hazards and storms, such as structural improvements, elevation, redundancy and backup systems, electric generators, are all eligible activities. Examples can include railway spurs, ports, industrial park infrastructure, utility distribution lines, broadband network components, and more. These are examples, and applicants should discuss additional project ideas with their economic development representative. Applicants must have matching share funds available at the time of application. Matching share funds may be cash or in kind. EDA generally expects a fund up to 80% of the eligible total defined project costs. EDA has flexibilities to establish higher grant rates in limited circumstances. It is important to remember that match has to meet 3 requirements. 1, it must be committed to the project, which means that a board or authorized official has designated the funds for the proposed project purpose. 2, it must be available as needed, meaning that the applicant has already secured the match and it will be available as needed during the period of performance. And 3, the match cannot be restricted in any way that would prevent the match from being used to pay project expenses. The applicant must submit matching share documentation that the match meets these 3 requirements. In general, match is paid out at the same general rate as EDA funds for all approved project expenses. If using in-kind, match must be fairly valued for the same project work and not supported by other federal expenditures in most cases. In addition to and separate from the match that is required to complete a project, applicants are strongly encouraged to secure investment and/or policy commitments to support and catalyze proposed outcomes. Note that required match from the previous slide is not the same as investment commitments. Both should be documented clearly in your application package. Think of match as the buy-in to the EDA-funded project. In other words, match funds are required to complete the project. In contrast, think of commitments as what stakeholders will do, investments or policy, to leverage the impacts of the project. In other words, to enhance, sustain, or capitalize on the project in the future. Review Appendix 2 of the NOFO for a helpful template for a commitment letter. Examples of investment commitments may include 1. Direct cash contributions to a component project not already counted as match, or a new fund for small businesses. 2. In-kind contributions, such as employee staff time, use of lab or office space, or software. Policy commitments could include industry commitment to place trained workers, private sector commitments to recruit in neighborhoods heavily impacted or damaged by disaster, data sharing agreements, general policies that help to ensure sufficient workforce housing, particularly for individuals in the target industry. Strong implementation path projects not only address the recovery needs of impacted communities, but also generate additional private investment and job opportunities to propel the region forward. Depending on a community's level of impact and distress following a major disaster, applicants can also be competitive by showing how their project will positively impact other measures for economic growth, such as growing the tax base, increasing participation in the labor force, preparing workers for high-skilled and high-wage jobs, including jobs that will help an area recover and rebuild, and reopening and expanding businesses. Jobs and private investment can be measured in the aggregate or in proportion to the area's relative population. Implementation applications will need to electronically submit their grant package through the EDA Grants portal. When you access the EDA Grants portal, it is important to applicants to select the pathway that they want to pursue. If you have more questions about using EDA's Grant portal, please check out the webinar on our website for applying in EDGE. In addition to the impact and engagement narrative, every application should include these elements. Applicants are required to be registered in SAM and provide a valid unique entity identifier, or UEI, in the application. Match documentation. Organizational documentation if applicable. In general, this is required for all nonprofit applications. For implementation path applicants, investment and policy commitments are strongly encouraged but not required. Documentation is through Form ED-900B, or a commitment letter from the relevant business. Depending on the type of project the applicant is proposing, the applicant must submit a complete project-specific package per project. The NOFO contains a table with an overview of required documents, broken out by whether the project is construction, non-construction, design and engineering, or revolving loan fund. Applicants are required to submit an impact and engagement narrative that answers specific questions about the impact of the proposed project. This up to 7-page narrative should tell your story of how EDA funding, alongside other capital commitments and support, will not only help the community recover, but also improve economic outcomes, putting the community on a trajectory to exceed previous pre-disaster conditions. Your project plan, described in the impact and engagement strategy, should include both near-term actions that can be accomplished in the first year and a longer-term strategy to maintain, grow, and evolve capacity for regional economic growth, engaging key partners and strengthening the region. See Appendix 1, Implementation Path, for a detailed description on the 5 subsections required in the impact and engagement narrative. Applications for the Implementation Path Disaster Opportunity will be accepted until funding is exhausted. Applications will undergo a review to ensure they are technically eligible based on criteria outlined in the NOFO. Then an investment review committee will be convened to evaluate the competitiveness of the submitted applications against the evaluation criteria and will present this to the selecting official, who will finalize grant determinations. Implementation projects will be evaluated on 4 criteria, weighed equally, as described on pages 39 through 41 in the NOFO. The 4 criteria are, number 1, disaster recovery and community needs, demonstrating an understanding of damage and economic loss due to the eligible disaster and pre-disaster economic conditions. 2, project strategy, addressing the community's disaster recovery needs as informed by a knowledge of regional assets and vulnerabilities, conditions pre and post disaster, alignment with the regional SEDS or SEDS equivalent, as well as the ability to leverage other public or private investments. Please note, while leveraging and aligning EDA funding with other funding is encouraged, duplication of benefit, that is applying the EDA for funding a specific activity that will be funded by another funder, is prohibited. The extent to which the project demonstrates responsiveness to public feedback will also be considered. 3, feasibility. How likely the project is to exceed. This includes leadership and organizational capacity, including partnerships with the private sector and other organizations, the extent to which the budget is realistic and appropriate, the likelihood of achieving outcomes on the proposed schedule, and the availability of committed matching funds. 4, performance goals and measures of success. How will success be measured? Milestones and indicators of success that are ambitious, achievable, clear, and measurable. Documenting delivery, community engagement, budget viability, clarity of outcomes, and clarification of who outcomes will accrue to, as well as how this project will help move a community forward toward readiness, will be evaluated. Pages 38 and 39 of the NOFO provide the evaluation criteria we will use for readiness path projects. Appendix 1 at pages 44 and 45 give the outline, notes, and questions to be answered in the impact and engagement narrative. This includes additional questions for different types of readiness grants, such as planning and strategy development, capacity building, pre-development costs. EDA continues its commitment to providing excellent customer service. Applicants are encouraged to contact their economic development representative to ensure project alignment with EDA program objectives and seek clarification on technical questions or submission requirements. Additionally, EDA continues to work to provide information on both the disaster opportunity and reference guides for how to access the EDA grant portal to make it easier for potential applicants to have all the information needed to apply available. There are additional webinars on our website for the FY25 Disaster Supplemental, including an overview of the NOFO. Webinars focus on each funding path and a webinar on assistance in applying through EDGE, our online grants management portal.